Can one person change the fate of the world? Can a single crop prevent famine, stop nations from collapsing, and save more lives than any soldier, politician, or physician in history? Most people don't know about Norman Borlaug. They should. Norman Borlaug was born in 1914 near Cresco, Iowa. Life on the family farm was simple. The work wasn't. Every day taught lessons about weather, soil, failure, and persistence. The farm became his first classroom. It also gave him a lifelong respect for the people who feed the world. The Great Depression arrived while Norman was still a young man. Families struggled, jobs disappeared, food itself became uncertain. These experiences shaped the questions he would spend the rest of his life trying to answer. How do you grow more food? How do you protect harvests? How do you make sure people never face hunger again? Few people realize that before Norman Borlaug became one of history's greatest scientists, he was one of Iowa's outstanding wrestlers. He's in the National Wrestling Hall of Fame. The sport of wrestling demanded endurance, discipline, preparation, and relentless determination, and how to keep fighting when exhausted. Those lessons stayed with Borlaug for the rest of his life. He coached young wrestlers. He later served as an official. Wrestling wasn't simply a sport. It built character. After graduating from the University of Minnesota, Norman Borlaug joined one of America's most ambitious public service programs, the Civilian Conservation Corps. The nation was still struggling through the Great Depression. Young men were sent into forests, parks, and public lands to restore landscapes damaged by years of hardship. For Borlaug, it became another classroom. Working outdoors, he saw how healthy soil, healthy forests, and careful stewardship could transform entire communities. The work demanded endurance, long days, simple living, teamwork, and the understanding that lasting progress comes one day's labor at a time. Those lessons echoed everything he had learned growing up on the farm and everything wrestling had taught him about perseverance. The CCC also deepened his belief that science could serve ordinary people, not simply to understand nature, but to improve lives. When he returned to the University of Minnesota to study forestry and later plant pathology, he carried those experiences with him. That search would soon take him thousands of miles from Iowa to the fields of Mexico. In the 1940s, wheat crops across Mexico were being devastated by disease. The country's wheat harvests could no longer keep pace with a growing population. The problem wasn't simply drought or poor farming. The wheat itself had reached its limits. Tall, traditional wheat varieties produced heavy heads of grain. When farmers added fertilizer to increase production, the plants grew even taller. Before harvest, wind and rain could cause entire fields to collapse under their own weight. Farmers called it lodging. Once the wheat fell, much of the crop could not be harvested. Even worse, a fungal disease known as stem rust could sweep through entire regions, destroying harvests in a matter of weeks. Farmers faced two enemies at once: plants that fell over and disease that destroyed what remained. Many experts believed famine was unavoidable. Norman Borlaug disagreed. Instead of accepting nature's limitations, he set out to change the wheat itself. Thousands of cross-pollinations, thousands of failures, thousands of miles walked through experimental fields. Eventually, his team developed wheat that resisted stem rust, grew shorter and stronger, absorbed fertilizer without collapsing, and produced harvests unlike anything farmers had seen before. For the first time, adding fertilizer no longer meant risking the entire crop. The impossible began to look possible. By 1956, Mexico had accomplished what many believed impossible. It had become self-sufficient in wheat. But Borlaug's work wasn't finished. For nearly another decade, he refined new varieties, trained scientists, and proved that the Mexican model could work beyond Mexico. Then, history intervened. Suddenly, the lessons learned in Mexico were no longer just a regional success story. They became a global necessity. By the early 60s, the world was divided by the Cold War. The United States and the Soviet Union competed for influence across Asia, Africa, and Latin America. But another battle was being fought, one that received far less attention, the battle against hunger. When nations cannot feed their own people, governments become unstable. Economic progress slows, desperation grows. History had shown that widespread food shortages can fuel unrest, migration, and political upheaval. For both East and West, agriculture became more than farming. It became an issue of national security. Many governments used food aid as a diplomatic tool, building alliances by shipping grain to countries facing famine. Norman Borlaug believed there was a better way. Instead of creating dependence, teach countries to feed themselves. That simple idea would reshape agriculture and strengthen nations. India and Pakistan stood on the edge of catastrophic famine. Millions faced an uncertain future. Borlaug believed the answer wasn't more food aid, it was helping nations feed themselves. Working alongside local scientists and farmers, the new wheat transformed harvests. Fields that once produced scarcity began producing abundance. Food became security. Hope replaced desperation. Norman Borlaug often said that peace cannot exist where people are hungry. His work changed agriculture, but more importantly, it changed lives. Millions of children grew up because food was available. Families stayed together. Communities survived. The greatest measure of his success wasn't found in laboratories. It was found around dinner tables, in classrooms, and in fields that continued to feed generations. Norman Borlaug never sought fame. He simply believed that science should serve humanity. The same Iowa winds that once moved across the fields of his childhood still move across those fields today. Quiet reminders that extraordinary lives often begin in ordinary places, and that sometimes changing the world starts with faith in a single seed. That faith helped Norman Borlaug become a great American.